Yo, what's good? It's your girl back with another one, and listen, what I'm about to tell you is going to have your jaw on the floor. You think you know what really went down after King Von's death? You think you've heard it all? Well, buckle up, because Wallo267 just broke his silence, and what he revealed about Lil Durk is sending shockwaves through the entire hip-hop community right now. We're talking about tears, we're talking about secrets that were never supposed to see the light of day, and we're talking about a truth so painful that even Wallo, a man who's been through prison, who's seen it all, couldn't hold it together. This isn't just some interview moment, y'all. This is a full-blown expose that has the streets talking, the fans divided, and Lil Durk's camp scrambling for damage control. From secret basement meetings with 100 armed gang members, to the revenge plot that almost tore Chicago apart, to the one thing Wallo said that made grown men put their guns down, this story has everything. And trust me when I say, by the end of this video, you're going to see Lil Durk, King Von's legacy, and the entire OTF movement in a completely different light. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and let's get into this crazy story. So look, before we get deep into this, let me set the scene for you because you need to understand the context of what was really happening behind closed doors. This is October 2020, right? King Von just got killed outside that hookah lounge in Atlanta, and the streets were on fire. I'm talking about Chicago ready to explode, social media going absolutely insane, and everyone looking at Lil Durk like, what you gonna do? Now, you gotta remember, King Von wasn't just some artist signed to OTF. Nah, that was Durk's day one. That was his brother, his protege, the man he put on and watched blow up right before his eyes. They had a bond that went deeper than music, deeper than money. This was family. So when Von got taken away like that, in the streets, in the most disrespectful way possible, everyone knew what was coming next. But here's where it gets crazy, and here's where Wallo267 comes into the picture. Now, if you don't know who Wallo is, let me put you on real quick. This man did 20 years in prison, came home, and became one of the most respected voices in the community. He talks about breaking cycles, about choosing life over death, about being there for your family instead of dying for your ego. So when Lil Durk reached out to him just weeks after King Von's funeral, people were confused. Why would Durk, a man whose best friend just got murdered, call someone known for preaching peace and forgiveness? Well, according to sources close to the situation, Durk didn't call Wallo for himself. He called him for his guys. See, word on the street is that after Von died, there were over 100 young men in Chicago ready to slide, ready to get revenge, ready to paint the city red until somebody paid for what happened to Von. And Durk was caught between being a leader and being a grieving brother. Now let me tell you what Wallo said in that viral interview that has everyone talking. He said, and I quote, Durk called me and said, I need you to come to Chicago. I need you to talk to these guys. At first, Wallo thought it was going to be a small, intimate conversation. Maybe 10, 15 people max. But when he pulled up to that undisclosed location in the heart of Chicago, he walked into a basement packed with 100 gang members, all of them strapped, all of them ready to die for Von's memory. Wallo described the energy in that room as something he'd never felt before. He said you could cut the tension with a knife. These weren't just random street dudes, these were Von's real friends, his block, his family. And they were hurt. They were angry. They were ready to go to war, and nothing was gonna stop them. Except, Durk had one request: hear Wallo out first. Now here's where the tears come in, and y'all, I'm telling you, when I saw the clip of Wallo breaking down, even I got emotional. This man, who survived 2 decades in prison, who's seen death and violence up close, stood in front of 100 potential killers and did something nobody expected. He cried. He broke down and told them about his brother, the one who got murdered, and how he made a choice that changed his life forever. Wallo said, "The man who killed my brother, I forgave him." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. He continued, "Am I a coward? Am I weak? I don't know what that means to y'all, but what I do know is that forgiving him gave me the freedom to live for my brother instead of die for him." And listen, that statement right there hit different. Because in the streets, forgiveness is seen as weakness. Letting something slide is seen as being soft. But Wallo flipped the script. He told them, "Y'all ready to die for Von? That's easy. Anybody can die. But are y'all ready to live for him? Are y'all ready to take care of his kids, support his mama, Build something in his name? Because dying is temporary, but living with purpose, that's forever. Now, sources in the room that day told me that when Wallo said that, you could see the shift. Some of the guys started putting their heads down. Some of them were wiping tears. Because the truth is, a lot of these young men never had anybody tell them it was okay to choose life. They grew up in a culture where revenge is everything, where your reputation is built on how tough you are, how quick you are to slide. But Wallo gave them permission to be human. But here's the part that nobody is talking about, and this is where the painful truth comes in. After Wallo finished speaking, Lil Durk stood up. And according to multiple people who were there, Durk looked at his guys and said something that shocked everyone. He said, "I wanted y'all to hear that because I can't be the one to tell y'all to slide. But I also can't be the one to tell y'all to stay home." Pause. Let that sink in. Durk basically admitted that he was torn. He wanted revenge just as bad as they did, but he also knew the consequences. He knew that if his guys went out there and did something, the feds were watching. The ops were waiting. And more people were gonna die. But at the same time, as the leader of OTF, as Von's big homie, how could he tell them not to ride for their fallen brother? This is where Wallow's message hit the hardest, because he looked at Durk and said, "You're not just a rapper, bro. You're not just a street dude. You're a father. You're a son. You got people depending on you. And if you let your ego make this decision, you're gonna lose everything." And y'all, when Wallo said that, Durk broke down too. Eyewitnesses said Durk put his head in his hands and just sat there in silence for what felt like forever. Now, here's where the story takes another twist, because after that meeting, something strange started happening. The retaliation that everyone expected? It didn't happen. At least not right away. Chicago stayed relatively quiet for a few weeks, and people started wondering, did Wallo actually get through to them? Did Durk really listen? But then, fast forward to 2024, and we all know what happened. Lil Durk gets arrested on federal charges, accused of allegedly being involved in a murder-for-hire plot connected to King Von's death. The feds claimed that Durk and members of OTF paid individuals to travel across state lines to commit murder. And when that news broke, the first thing people thought about was that meeting. They thought about Wallo's warning. They thought about the tears. And they realized, maybe the message didn't stick after all. Now, Wallo hasn't directly commented on Durk's arrest, but in a recent interview, he got emotional again talking about it. He said, "I tried, man. I really tried. I told them the streets don't love you back. I told them the system is waiting for you to slip. But sometimes, pain is louder than wisdom." And when he said that, you could see the hurt in his eyes. Because Wallo genuinely believed he had saved those young men that day. He thought his words had made a difference. But the reality is, breaking generational trauma and street mentality takes more than one conversation. Let me tell you something else that's been circulating, and this is where it gets really messy. There are rumors, and I'm saying rumors, so take this with a grain of salt, that some people in Durk's camp felt like Wallo was overstepping. They felt like he came in as an outsider, preaching peace, when he didn't really understand the depth of the pain they were going through. One anonymous source close to OTF told a blogger, "Wallo meant well, but he don't know what it's like to lose your best friend in the streets and have the whole world watching to see if you a real one or not." And look, I can see both sides. On one hand, Wallo was trying to save lives. He was trying to give these young men an alternative perspective, a way out of the cycle. But on the other hand, when you're in the thick of grief, when your brother just got killed and the streets are expecting you to respond, logic doesn't always win. Emotion does. Pride does. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people believe led to Durk's current situation. But wait, there's more. Because Wallo also revealed something that a lot of people missed in that original interview. He talked about a conversation he had with his niece, King Von's daughter. Wait, no, I'm sorry, his own niece, his brother's daughter. She was only 4 or 5 years old when Wallo got out of prison, and she told him, "Uncle Wallo, are you coming home? I need you." And that moment, Wallo said, changed everything for him. He realized that revenge wasn't just about him and the person who killed his brother. It was about his niece growing up without a father and an uncle. It was about his mother losing another son. It was about the generational impact of violence. And that's the message he tried to give to Durk's crew. He said, "Vaughn's kids need y'all. Vaughn's mama needs y'all. Don't let them lose y'all too." Now, here's where fans are divided. Some people are praising Wallo, calling him a hero, saying he tried to save Durk and OTF from self-destruction. But others are saying Wallo was naive. They're saying the streets don't work like that, and no motivational speech was ever gonna stop what was already in motion. One viral tweet said, Wallo thought he was speaking to lost souls. Nah, he was speaking to soldiers. And soldiers do what they trained to do. And honestly, that's the painful truth that Wallo is now coming to terms with. In his most recent interview, he admitted, "I can give you the message, but I can't give you the resources to leave the environment. I can tell you to choose life, but if you're still living in the same hood, surrounded by the same ops, with the same pressure, what choice do you really have?" And that statement right there is what has people calling this the most real and raw conversation about street violence we've seen in years. But let's talk about Lil Durk for a second, because his side of the story is important too. Durk has always been open about the pain of losing Vaughn. In his music, in interviews, he's talked about how it broke him. He's talked about the survivor's guilt, the pressure to respond, the constant paranoia. And while he's never explicitly said he ordered a hit or was involved in any retaliation, his lyrics tell a story. Songs like "Aha" and others have lines that fans have dissected and connected to real-life events. So the question everyone is asking now is, did Durk ignore Wallow's advice, or did the streets pull him back in despite his best efforts to resist? Some insiders say Durk tried to go the legal route, tried to focus on his music and his family, but the pressure from his guys, from the culture, from the expectation of what a real one is supposed to do, was too much. Others say Durk never had any intention of letting Vaughn's death slide, and the meeting with Wallo was just for show, a way to say he tried to keep the peace. And here's another layer to this that's been making the rounds on social media. Some people are saying that Wallow's tears weren't just about Durk and Vaughn. They were about the system. Wallo talked about how he, his stepfather, and his brother all ended up in the same prison at different times. He talked about how the prison system profits off of black pain, how guards send their kids to college off the backs of incarcerated black men, while those same black men's families struggle. He said, and this quote gave me chills, "Me and the homies never bought our mamas a house. We never sent our kids to college. But we sent their kids to college. We built their communities while ours crumbled." And when you think about it like that, the cycle of violence isn't just about gang beef. It's about a system that's designed to keep us fighting each other while they profit. Now, let's get into the fan reactions, because social media has been insane since this story broke. On Twitter, people are split down the middle. One side is saying, Wallo is a real one for even trying. He risked his life going into that room. Another side is saying, Wallo was clout chasing. He knew that story would go viral. And then there's a third group saying, it doesn't matter what Wallo said. Durk is a grown man, and he made his choices. Over on Instagram, the comments under Wallow's page are a mix of love and criticism. Some people are calling him a hero, a voice of reason in a culture that glorifies death. But others are saying he's out of touch, that he spent 20 years locked up and doesn't understand how the streets operate in 2024. One comment that got thousands of likes said, Wallo means well, but telling gang members not to slide is like telling a fish not to swim. It's in their DNA. But here's what's not being talked about enough, and this is where I want you to really pay attention. Wallo didn't just talk about Durk and Vaughn. He talked about the bigger picture. He talked about how the rap industry profits off of Black Death. He said record labels, media outlets, and even fans want the drama. They want the beef. They want the violence because it sells records, it gets clicks, it creates content. He said, we're entertaining people with our pain, and they're getting rich off of it while we're losing our brothers. And when you think about how King Von's death was covered by the media, how his body wasn't even cold yet before people were making YouTube videos, podcasts, and documentaries about it, you start to realize Wallo has a point. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. There are whispers, and again, these are unconfirmed, that some people in the industry actually discouraged Durk from taking Wallow's advice. That they told him, if you don't respond, you'll lose your street cred. If you lose your street cred, you lose your fan base. If you lose your fan base, you lose your money. And if that's true, then this isn't just about Durk making a bad decision. It's about an entire industry that profits off of keeping artists in a cycle of violence. One music executive, who spoke anonymously to a hip-hop blog, said, "The streets and the boardroom are not that different. Both want you to prove your loyalty, even if it kills you." And that quote right there should tell you everything you need to know about why Wallow's message, as powerful as it was, might not have been enough to change the outcome. Let's also talk about the emotional toll this has taken on Wallo. In multiple interviews since the Durk arrest, Wallo has been visibly shaken. He's questioned whether he said the right things, whether he could have done more, whether he failed those young men. And the reality is, Wallo is carrying a weight that's not his to carry. He did what he could. He showed up. He spoke his truth. But at the end of the day, everyone has to make their own choices. One thing Wallo said recently that really stuck with me was, "I can't save everybody. But if I can save one person, if I can make one man think twice before he throws his life away, then it's worth it." And I think that's the real takeaway here. Wallow's message wasn't a failure just because Durk's situation turned out the way it did. It was a success for every young man in that room who didn't go out and do something reckless. It was a success for everyone watching that viral video who decided to choose life over death. Now, before we wrap up this section, I want to touch on one more thing that's been making the rounds. There's a theory, and I'm not saying I believe it, but it's out there, that the feds were already watching Durk during that meeting with Wallo. That they already had him under investigation, and the meeting was just a blip on their radar. Some people believe that no matter what Wallo said, no matter what Durk did, the outcome was already sealed because the system had decided Durk was going down. And if that's true, then Wallow's tears take on a whole new meaning. Because he wasn't just crying for Durk, or for Vaughn, or for those 100 men in that basement. He was crying for a system that's rigged against black men from the start. A system that glorifies us when we're entertaining, and demonizes us when we're surviving. A system that profits off our pain and then locks us up when we react to it. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a painful truth, that sometimes, love isn't enough. Wisdom isn't enough. Even tears aren't enough. Because as long as the environment stays the same, as long as the system stays the same, as long as the culture glorifies revenge over healing, we're going to keep losing our brothers. And people like Wallo are going to keep crying, keep trying, keep hoping that one day, the message finally sticks. So there you have it, y'all. The full story behind Wallo267's emotional breakdown, the secret basement meeting, and the painful truth about Lil Durk after King Von's death. This isn't just some beef or drama. This is a real-life tragedy that's still unfolding, and it affects real people, real families, and real communities. Wallo tried to save Durk and his crew from a cycle of violence, but as we've seen, breaking that cycle is harder than anyone wants to admit. The streets have rules that don't bend for tears or wisdom. The system has traps that don't care about good intentions. And the industry just wants content, whether you're alive or locked up to create it. But here's what I want you to think about. Do you think Wallo failed, or did he plant a seed that just hasn't grown yet? Do you think Lil Durk ignored the message, or was he trapped in a situation he couldn't escape? And most importantly, what do we do as a culture to stop glorifying the very violence that's destroying us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I know y'all got opinions on this. Do you respect Wallo for trying, or do you think he was overstepping? Do you think Durk should have listened, or was the pressure too much? Let's have a real conversation about this. And if you made it this far, go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not already part of the family, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop these deep dives. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Wallow's message, because real talk, we all need to choose life over ego. I'm out, but I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe, stay woke, and remember, living for your people is way more powerful than dying for your pride.